Hi guys, this video is going to be an opinion piece with the goal of expressing a sentiment I feel compelled to share. I'm not asserting everything that's said here to be 100% fact, it's just my thoughts based on public-facing narratives and information. As some of you may know, I don't consider myself a K-pop fan really. I grew up on, and mainly listened to, what you would call Western music. So watching something like the NewJeans and ADOR situation play out in K-pop was bizarre to me, not because contract disputes are uncommon, but because the way in which this all unfolded was pretty unique. What I want to do in this video is draw some parallels between their case and the TLC case, so I can make a broader point about music business dynamics. TLC isn't the only example, but I think they share the most commonalities. I'm not actually old enough to have witnessed their legal case in real time, but it's well documented how that situation played out from start to finish. That information allowed me to anticipate and even predict some of the outcomes we've already seen with NewJeans. So I'll do a compare and contrast. I'll have to start from the beginning to provide context. HYBE brings in Min Heejin. She was already an accomplished veteran in the K-pop industry, and she oversaw every aspect of what would eventually become NewJeans. She was the brains behind their branding, and according to her, she handpicked every member. HYBE granted Min Heejin her own sub-label, ADOR, to debut NewJeans under her creative and executive leadership. As for TLC, they were formed in the early 90s after each member successfully auditioned for Perry Reid, famously known as Pebbles. Pebbles was already established in the music industry as a singer and had just started her own production company, Pebbles, with the intention of launching a new girl group. She was married to L.A. Reid, a powerhouse in the music industry with his own label, LaFace Records, and Pebbles essentially acted as a subsidiary. Pebbles would oversee every aspect of TLC's development, from the lineup to their style, and even music production. In many ways, Pebbles was the Min Heejin in TLC's story. The members of NewJeans and TLC were unknown artists prior to debut, so this was their big break into the music industry. Due to this obvious power imbalance, there's going to be some trade-off when it comes to signing their initial contracts. In exchange for this level of investment, NewJeans signed airtight 7-year exclusive contracts with ADOR, and TLC's management deal with Pebbles was equally, if not more, airtight. L.A. Reid signed the group to LaFace Records in a contract negotiated by Pebbles, but he would often butt heads with his then-wife over her control of TLC's management. If you ask Min Heejin, her and HYBE's chairman Bang Si-hyuk would clash in a similar way, but she too had total control over her group's management. These narratives are eerily aligned to this point. Now just listen to the way Pebbles describes her philosophy and tell me if she reminds you of anyone.
I renamed the group. I remember the moment I was coming out of my parking lot at my office. I kept saying the name Second Nature is not the right name. Just not huge. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is going to be huge. I'm like, And I remember it was just like a light bulb went out. TLC. I'm like, got it. Because the other member, before we replaced her name was Crystal. And when I did my label, I signed a lot of people from the auditions that I got, a lot of different people. But when I'm looking for something specific, it has to make sense. And all the dots have to connect. And now I got to invest money. And now I got to get some work in to get them developed and help carve out this image, this whole... There's so much to get into that. I had them in development over a year. Before you went and saw them. Yes.
Okay, before they...
Oh, yes. Because my formula
it's
was
hard
development.
to wait a year if you're hungry and want to do this thing.
Well, that's true. But unless you got what you need, you better sit your hips down. You know what I'm saying?
Get that knowledge.
And get this knowledge, number one. Not only that, you have to sharpen your craft. You have to be the baddest at what you do. I don't play that. We're going to get here. I'll make general at the game. VIP status. Sit right here and let's get this tight. Because my concept of artist development is when you see my acts, you're going to think they've been here for a long time. And there's a reason. They look effortless and polished. But that's only going in and modifying.
Were you proud of what you put together?
Yes.
When they're like one of the biggest...
Listen, and I had to fight for even the girls don't know how much I would have to fight everybody to get things done. The benefit that they had is that they had the CEOs and presidents of their companies as their backers. So you have this person who can green light everything as your biggest supporter. You know what I'm saying?
That's more than half the battle.
Honey,
that is the battle.
That's the battle. And this is your creative entity with you, and they can green light and go tell everybody else, no, this is what we're going to do, not what you talk about. You know what I'm saying? What you're talking about is not this vision. See, you gotta be careful when you create something. You can't take your formula and put it in the hands of people that don't have one, or they have a different formula. Then they're going to dilute yours. You're not going to have the same thing. So I don't believe that would have gotten pulled off the way it did if there was any variation at all.
Min Heejin also talks about choosing the name NewJeans because of its global appeal. She had control over creative and business decisions, but she still says it was a fight to get things done. Even the way she describes artist development as a curriculum, all of it is very similar to the thought process Pebbles shared. TLC would go on to achieve massive commercial and critical success with their debut and sophomore albums. The girls were superstars touring the world and even took home 2 Grammys for their second album. There was just one problem, though, a big problem, and that was money. When I tell you the members of TLC were broke, I mean filing for bankruptcy level broke. According to them, their contracts left them with scraps after expenses, which then had to be split 3 ways amongst the members. This is where these 2 stories start to diverge because NewJeans had the opposite experience. The success of their debut made each member a millionaire as rookies. The contracts they signed were definitely restrictive, but standard for the K-pop industry and very much lawful. Cracks began showing once HYBE was tipped off that Min Heejin wanted to take ADOR independent, prompting them to launch an audit of her and the sub-label. This began a long corporate power struggle between the 2 that NewJeans was stuck in the middle of. Pebbles herself had issues with LaFace Records, whom she blamed for TLC's money issues. This led to a rift between her and her now ex-husband, causing them to split both personally and professionally. The members of TLC would end up suing the label after their request to renegotiate their record contracts was denied. They would also sue Pebble, seeking to terminate their management contracts with Pebbles. NewJeans firmly aligned themselves with Min Heejin and submitted court petitions in support of her. ADOR eventually replaced her as CEO, which led to NewJeans' famous Guerrilla livestream. All 5 members went on camera to condemn HYBE, air out their grievances with the company, and demand Min Heejin's reinstatement within 14 days. This is another point of diversion in these 2 stories. Pebbles insists to this day that she did not steal a dime from TLC, and any money issues were not her fault, but the girls opted out of that blame game. TLC understood that regardless of their affinity for her, Pebbles played a role in their dilemma just as much as their label did. Who shares more of the blame depends on who you ask, but it's evident that Pebbles failed to protect them regardless. She was their manager and mentor, but pointing fingers did not benefit the members' interests. They needed accountability and change from all parties involved, and they weren't going to stray from that goal due to emotional ties. Both Min Heejin and HYBE share blame for the impact ADOR Gate ultimately had on NewJeans. Min Heejin was draped in allegations of business espionage, breach of trust, and even embezzlement. All of which she denies, by the way. True or not, though, the severity of these claims meant that her days in the company were obviously numbered. ADOR did offer her the chance to stay in a creative capacity, but she refused to settle for that role and made it clear she would fight to regain her CEO position. NewJeans would advocate on her behalf, continue to refer to her as their CEO, and try pressuring the company to reinstate her. Say what you want about Min Heejin, she at least made sure NewJeans got paid and reaped the benefits of their success. What she seemingly didn't do was instill in them the confidence to stand on their own. When the girls speak about how much they need and rely on Min Heejin, there's this sense of codependence that's just unsettling.
Min Heejin 대표님 is not only the person that produces our music, but someone who makes NewJeans who we are. She discusses even the smallest details with us and explains them in ways that we can understand clearly. NewJeans has a distinct colour and tone, and this was created with Min Heejin 대표님. She is integral to NewJeans' identity, and we all feel that she is irreplaceable.
TLC wasn't making money under Pebbles, but they did gain a sense of identity from her guidance, both as people and artists. When you hear them speak about their dynamic, it's similar in the way that it's maternal, but it doesn't have that same feeling of over-reliance.
I love Perry. You know, she did a lot for us. You know, she really helped me figure out who T-Boz was and really tap into my talent. There was a lot of things she did do for us, but at the same point, Ray, you're never going to agree, so we can respectfully agree to disagree.
Y'all still speak to Pebbles or no?
Yeah, why y'all never cut Pebbles?
Let's talk about.
You can or you still do?
I have. We have.
Yeah,
we have.
What do y'all? I mean,
Now let's talk about it because people haven't seen the movie yet.
Well, explain a little bit of what we're talking about with Pebbles. Now,
Pebbles is the one that put TLC together. It was her idea.
The thing that is true, though, I will say she did do some good for us.
Yeah.
She put us together. She taught us some things. But then there's always times when you work with people, there's always things that you're never going to agree with and you don't like their ways. Mm-hmm. And people part. And I just think she never got over that.
And he said, P, I don't know what people, think out here, but these girls love you. It's just they don't talk about it publicly. But behind closed doors, they always talk about you. They're little mini versions of you. You know what I mean? Because you were so interwoven into you've been their mentor. I love those girls. I mean, anybody that had to deal with me regarding TLC, I wouldn't care. And it's good and bad. Because I wouldn't let people fool with them. Mm-hmm. I was like a mommy bear over her babies. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people, once you put your artists on the road and all, they become involved with the distributors and all sorts. They want to, who do they think that? I'm like, who you talk to? Mm-hmm. Come over here and talk to me. Mm-hmm. You know how mama would say, you got to come through me to get to my child.
Min Heejin eventually resigned from ADOR altogether, and NewJeans would attempt to depart the company as well just days later. NewJeans made it clear that they intended to reunite with Min Heejin and continue working with her. Needless to say, ADOR didn't just let their only artists walk out the door and filed a lawsuit to confirm their contracts remained valid. They even secured an injunction that prevents NewJeans from pursuing independent activities without the company. Most of the Korean legal community agree that NewJeans basically drove full speed off a legal cliff. They announced Sejong as their law firm, which is the same law firm that represents Min Heejin. Here is where these two cases begin to parallel again. TLC members obviously had no money or connections when they first signed their management contracts with Pebbles, so she referred them to attorneys and accountants that could assist. This is actually something record labels and executives do, provide legal counsel to their artists, which can often result in conflicts of interest. Many people have pointed out how some of the decisions NewJeans made, presumably under the guidance of their shared law firm, may have benefited Min Heejin, but were detrimental to their own case. Similarly, TLC realized that the lawyers Pebbles found for them came with multiple conflicts of interest.
How about we were in the same firm as them?
They're the same lawyer.
Yes, so it was like...
And accountant, remember everybody
And accountant, it was all one circle.
It was like one big melting pot.
Remember the lawyer gave us like money off of our bill because they really were like, we didn't think you guys were going to blow up and do what you did. And so he was like, I apologize to you. Because we were their lawyers. So it was a conflict of interest from
everywhere.
Day one.
And how would you feel if you were being portrayed as something you're not?
I would be very upset.
And you're not being portrayed as who you are, a visionary.
Yes.
I'm not an assistant, just here looking around getting a hairdo done and some nail polish. I'm a visionary.
Oh, yeah.
The bottom line is you had your own attorneys. The only thing I did was get a referral for you because nobody knows you.
So the attorneys that you referred them to negotiate their contracts were people that you knew all along?
No. I did not know them.
Okay.
20 years ago, we're in Atlanta. Oh, it's a reputable firm. So T-Boz is a shampoo girl. Are they going to pick up her call at that point in her life to say, I want to negotiate a contract? No, it has to be based on reputation. I'm saying, would you please, I have a group that I want to sign, but they need representation. Yeah. Please take the meeting. If it works out, cool.
TLC signed away a significant portion of their future earnings in their management contracts, and Pebbles retained ownership of the group's name, image, likeness, etc. One-sided agreements like this are not uncommon in music, especially between unknown artists and established individuals or companies. Pebbles, as their manager, also negotiated TLC's contract with LaFace Records. The group eventually sued her for mismanagement and alleged that the legal counsel she referred them to favoured her interests over theirs. Pebbles agreed to step away from actual group management, but refused to terminate the management contracts. Similarly, NewJeans are seeking to terminate their contracts with ADOR, but that's proven to be a difficult prospect. The consensus is that they're unlikely to win in court, and the one court ruling we've gotten so far was NewJeans losing the injunction in spectacular fashion. They did an interview shortly after this where Honey expressed sadness and seemingly a hint of possible regret.
I was obviously expecting the alternative results, but yeah, so I think it was like a moment where we were all really just like kind of in shock.
I'm not Korean, so I don't have any family here either. And so my parents and my whole family, everyone's in Australia, so everyone is very, very much concerned. I remember my mum calling me one time. She just felt really sad that we have to go through this. So when I heard that, I just felt really sad because I think it's the same for all of us. So if we knew that we were going to go through this, maybe we would have chosen, I don't know, because living doesn't work that way, but it's okay. We're going to get through it. Yeah. I'm just trusting time.
The members were very confident they would win that injunction beforehand, and it makes you wonder what their law firm, or maybe even Min Heejin, was telling them. NewJeans opted to go on hiatus instead of continuing to work under ADOR, and have filed an appeal to overturn the injunction. TLC also went on hiatus for 5 years between their second and third albums, partly due to personal issues, but mostly because of their own legal mess. TLC's success was costing them more money than it was making them, so they took a break from music to focus on fighting their contracts and getting back their IP from Pebbles. They actually received a lot of criticism for this decision at the time, and this experience was reenacted in their biopic years later.
Broke? I just can't see it. All those videos, all those albums sold. The broke thing, I just don't see it.
Somebody needs to curb their spending habits for real.
Hey, TLC, it's called a savings account. Now,
First they burned down their homes, now they can't pay their bills. I ain't feeling sorry for them.
Yo, where's their manager? They getting dogged for real.
Ouch. Well, y'all, look, if you could see the expression on Lisa's face right now, you'd know there's another version to this story.
The public couldn't comprehend how superstar singers can possibly be broke, so they accused TLC of squandering their fortunes with poor spending habits. The girls made an effort to explain how popular artists can end up in debt, but it's hard for people to empathize with celebrities in this way.
Trust me, you can sell 10 million albums and be broke if you have greedy people behind you. All right, this is how a group can sell 10 million records and be broke. And everyone, get ready to do your math. Okay, there are 100 points on the album. TLC had 7. Every point is equal to 8 cents. All right? 7 times 8, 56 cents. That means every time an album gets sold, TLC gets 56 cents. So 10 million records, $5.6 million. Seems like a lot of money. Well, it's not a lot of money when the record company has spent $3 million to record your album. And in the record business, we pay all costs back to the record company. We pay recording costs, video costs. So now we have $2.6 million left. Well, guess what? When you have that much money, you're in about the 47, 48, 49% tax bracket. So that immediately gets deducted to $1.3 million. Then you split the rest 3 ways. You got about $300,000 apiece, if that much. Okay? $300,000. I can buy a nice house with that. And what am I going to pay my bills with?
TLC were legally disadvantaged, and the public wasn't overwhelmingly supportive. They resorted to raiding their label's office and holding the CEO hostage. Yes, I do mean a real hostage situation, and they refused to release him until he paid them for the sales of their wildly successful second album, In the end, they left empty-handed apart from some TLC paraphernalia they ripped down from the walls. The reason I'm not saying allegedly here is because they admitted to all of this.
We held them hostage like guns, the whole shebang. Yeah, it was like that. Because,
wait a minute. I want to make sure we
serious.
understand.
Yes.
Guns?
Yes, guns.
With bullets?
With bullets.
Come on, give me the
I'm
story,
going to tell
baby.
you because TLC had generated on Crazy Sexy Cool $75 million, and they gave us $50,000 apiece. I was like, what the hell?
They took drastic measures because they were stuck in bad contracts. TLC's hiatus was basically them going on strike, which successfully compelled the label to renegotiate their contracts. ADOR made attempts to reach a compromise with NewJeans on majority of their demands, but the girls weren't satisfied unless Min Heejin was fully reinstated as CEO. NewJeans have been heavily criticized for their loyalty to Min Heejin. This dynamic has been under a microscope due to such public displays of affection, but Dispatch released a bombshell article that escalated this concern into suspicions of tampering. They accused Min Heejin of orchestrating NewJeans' actions from the start of the conflict all the way to their termination notice, a premeditated escape plan. Photos were revealed of Min Heejin meeting with the chairman of Davalink, who gave testimony on his encounter with her. He claims Min Heejin sought investment from him to leave ADOR and start a new label with NewJeans, while still serving as internal director with ADOR. The agency brought these allegations to court during the injunction, believing that Min Heejin had essentially poisoned NewJeans against the company. Just a reminder again that Min Heejin denies this, and even NewJeans have denied her being involved with their decisions. At this point in the video, we have to talk about where TLC ended up and where NewJeans is headed. Pebbles had already agreed to step away from actual group management before TLC sued her, but that didn't dissolve the management contract itself, so she was still entitled to a large portion of their revenue. She also owned the name TLC, among other IP associated with the group, and was not backing down in the dispute. Her message was clear. TLC, the essence of it, whatever you believe it to be, is mine. This is my group. I created it, I built it, I funded it, and I'm not about to let it go for nothing.
Does she still own the name TLC or no?
No, we had to buy $1 million a letter.
$3 million.
Wow.
She wanted to say she didn't get enough money.
We were told by the girls when they came here that they had to buy back the name of their group for $1 million a letter from you.
Confidentiality agreement, that is not a... no, I know. But no, listen, you guys, that's called a soundbite they came up with.
Yeah.
So, in that, you cannot state what happened, ballpark, not how it went down, it's not based on letters, and it was my name, not theirs.
Are they going to be able to call themselves TLC?
That's their name.
Okay, that's their
Yeah, because once you settle and you make an agreement, that's their name.
Okay.
They can come up with it.
Did money have to exchange hands for you to...
money had to exchange hands for them to finally go their way to have another deal elsewhere because they couldn't take my group. Let me say this.
Oh, I hate the music business.
Me too, and a lot of the business of the music business is a mess. But let me say this. You see the painted clothes? These are my visions. I came up with all those ideas.
When the members declared bankruptcy, both Pebbles and LaFace Records accused them of filing in bad faith to escape contractual obligations. Yes, in their respective lawsuits, both parties argued that TLC's money issues were exaggerated and that the girls were simply leveraging bankruptcy law to get away from their contracts. However, TLC was able to prove in court that their financial distress was legitimate, so their bankruptcy filing was upheld. This opened the door for a settlement agreement in both cases. Their management contracts were terminated in exchange for a large payout to Pebbles, a termination fee, if you will. The lawsuit against LaFace Records ended with a renegotiation of their label contracts, which involved an extension to include 2 additional albums. Pebbles herself reached a settlement with LaFace Records as well, which again involved a large payout for her. The label also agreed to pay off TLC's debts and was required to pay Pebbles a percentage of the group's future earnings. To put it very simply, TLC couldn't terminate their contracts. The revenue splits outlined within them were just really unfair. The court even acknowledged that this payment structure left them completely bankrupt. Their settlement with Pebbles allowed them to pay their way out of their management contracts, and they ultimately made amends with LaFace Records. They stayed with the label, negotiated better conditions for themselves, then returned from hiatus and fulfilled their contracts. LaFace Records basically paid to remove Pebbles from the equation, but she wasn't exactly happy that TLC chose to stay with the label. NewJeans' situation is kind of flipped because they sided with their creative director and ditched their label. Min Heejin, much like Pebbles, is a very controversial figure. She can't exactly help them ditch ADOR the way LaFace Records helped TLC get rid of Pebbles. Not only does she not have the same funds, she has her own legal mess to deal with. NewJeans have essentially put their very existence within the industry on the line to remain loyal to her, but it's hard to say that effort has been returned in kind. So, what happens next? There was a time when they could have stayed in ADOR and maybe cut ties with Min Heejin, but that ship sailed long ago. When the walls began closing in, some fans had a change of heart and started to encourage the girls to return to the company. Not only is it too little too late for that, NewJeans are in too deep for that kind of U-turn. The only logical conclusion here is a settlement to terminate or indefinite hiatus. I personally think they should settle, but what that settlement looks like will change as time goes on. The fee to terminate their ADOR contracts is said to be between 450 and 620 billion Korean won. That's up to $441 million. Regardless of their affinity for her, they have to realize at some point that their interests are not aligned with Min Heejin's. I could accept if the girls fully understood the implications of the choices they made out of loyalty. However, based on their actions and words, it seems they believed this would go a different way. For them to be so confident they would win the injunction, then question their decisions afterwards, it just shows they weren't given a full perspective. They've also showcased an alarming level of dependence on her both personally and professionally, as if they don't believe they can succeed without her. Let's be clear, Min Heejin's role in NewJeans' success cannot be understated. She's obviously a great creative mind, but she's not the end-all be-all. Pebbles also deserves her flowers for making TLC what it was, and the members have acknowledged this on multiple occasions. The two surviving members still maintain that they have nothing against Pebbles. She made them stars, and Pebbles still says she sees them as daughters. Regardless, though, TLC went on to prove that they could achieve success without her because they believed in themselves, the same way NewJeans can too, if they would just allow themselves to try. This story likely ends with NewJeans owing a lot of money to ADOR and HYBE. There's already been lawyer fees, injunction fees, and eventually probably a penalty fee. That's the consensus based on current information. During the first court hearing, the judge encouraged a settlement which NewJeans' side said they aren't open to. The judge tried to encourage a settlement again during the second court hearing and actually expressed regret that NewJeans completely shut down this possibility. The court believes a settlement would be the best outcome for everyone. I believe this is true for NewJeans especially. It would minimize whatever penalty they'd need to pay and maybe even get them their IP rights. I mean, they could also just wait out the remaining 5 years of their contracts and do nothing. TLC's hiatus actually lasted 5 years, and their return album, Fan Mail, was still successful. If Min Heejin's still around, then she can work with them 5 years from now. I mean, NewJeans would be free agents at that point. When we look back on this case years from now, it'll likely be as a cautionary tale. There will probably be some kind of documentary, and depending on what narrative it shapes, someone's going to sue. We saw this with TLC's VH1 biopic, with Pebbles suing Viacom for defamation due to her portrayal in the film. There was a settlement, with Pebbles again receiving a payout. It doesn't really matter though, because the narrative is set. TLC are the artists. They're the ones people want to hear from and believe. If they say Pebbles did all the things shown in the film, then that's going to exist in the ethos for eternity. I believe NewJeans have staked a lot on public opinion and perception. ADOR could win this legal case on every front, but how much will that actually influence the narrative? They can be compensated for damages and cash out a large penalty fee, but will it really change fans' minds? If Min Heejin was truthful about filming a documentary on all this, I smell another lawsuit brewing in about 7 years. History really repeats itself, doesn't it? I think I've yapped long enough. Thank you for watching. This is the first time I've produced a video of this length. I appreciate you all. Please be well and take care.